YCS Indianapolis was held June 1st and 2nd of this year. This YCS was the first one to be held after YCS Raleigh, where the ban list was unceremoniously dropped mere days before the event. Sure, Snake Eyes represented the majority of Top Cut in Raleigh, but nobody had a chance to pivot off the deck. Surely the deck was hurt enough by some pretty significant hits that after a month and a half and the release of Tenpai, we would definitely have a shakeup, right? Oh. Not only is Snake Eyes still dominating, it's even worse than before. This also reflects the results of smaller attendance events that have been held across the globe outside of the OCG. This has left a lot of people very upset. The general player base doesn't tend to appreciate a tier 0 meta, and that does feel like where we've continued to stay since the ban list. We all know this, we've been through this before with tier limit after all, but something is a little different this time. In the time of tier limit, many players, especially in the competitive circles, love the format for its engaging mirror match. While you can debate the merits of this argument depending on what you value in Yu-Gi-Oh gameplay, tier limit tier 0 remains a fond memory for many duelists. And what do these players think of the Snake Eye mirror? Well, they hate it. So what's the difference? Tier limit and Snake Eyes both dominated their meta and made virtually every deck besides themselves not worth playing. And yet, one of them is considered fun, and the other is not. The difference is a problem with card design over the last several months. The problem lies in the interaction of one-card combos and non-engine. One-card combos have been in the game for a long time. So long, in fact, that I don't feel comfortable declaring a first example because I'm absolutely sure someone could one-up it and find an earlier one. A classic example of the one-card combo would be Alistair. Normal Alistair. By summoning Alistair, you can add Invocation, and then link into Almirage and then the Secure Garnet to fuse into Mechaba, or these days just going straight into Artemis. One card that accesses your entire combo for at least one engine. This is made even better by the fact that Alistair can be searched by his field spell. This means it's almost like you were playing 6 copies of the card from a deck building perspective. The recursion of Invocation that allows you to do the whole thing over again made it a formidable engine for several years. Despite all this power, Alistair has been around for a long time and has never been hit by the Forbidden and Limited list outside of Duel Links, where it was introduced way too soon. So one-card combos on their own are not the issue. The thing about Alistair is that it doesn't put much of a threat up on its own. Invoked was always paired with a second or third or even fourth engine to push it over the top. Shadow, Dogmatica, Branded, Eldritch, Mech Knight, Spiral, Wind Witch, Artifact, all sorts of engines have been paired with the Invoker. All of these engines take up a significant amount of space in the deck. In the time of Alistair's peak, it was common to see about 3 to 9 pieces of non-engine in decks, depending on the era and the duelist. It's a long time span. And it's not because these cards weren't good. In fact, they're mostly the same cards we have today. No, the reason the deck ran less non-engine is simply because it couldn't fit it in. Some invoked builds attempted to include more, looking very similar to Tenpai lists we see today, but with kaijus instead of the C-tier hand traps. However, the ceiling on these lists was just too small to convert to top cut very often. The engine size was there, but the lower power level kept it in check. But as always happens, decks started to get stronger. Sword Soul doesn't need so much engine, it's a very tight combo. This allowed for 2 directions. One direction was to follow the trend of recent years and shove more engine in. This led to 60 card piles of engines, each one extremely powerful and most of them able to work with just one card. Just drawing into one engine could be enough to win the game, but drawing into multiple could all but guarantee it. And while all these engines each had bricks, the 60 cards allowed those bricks to be drowned out. The odds of drawing any specific garnet was significantly reduced, and the odds of drawing multiple garnets were microscopic. In the 60 card pile, you will draw at least one playable engine without fail. The other path for Sword Soul was to reduce the engine as much as possible and play more non-engine. 60 card pile decks, while popular for a while, just couldn't keep up with a deck that could consistently draw several pieces of interruption and full combo. It stopped all their engine from getting off the ground in the first place, while they couldn't consistently access the same non-engine. You can run a 4th engine, but you can't run a 4th Ash Blossom. But even at 40 cards, Sword Soul had troubles. Sword Soul's combo is more of a 1.5 card combo, requiring a worm in hand, meaning you can't completely cut down to just the main combo. You need supplementary Tenyi cards to prevent inconsistency, reducing your total non-engine. Then the Branded Structure deck was released. The Branded Structure deck created a very consistent deck that had a 1-card combo that is searchable by an extremely searchable monster, a Luber. 9 individual cards could access the combo, and additional 2-card combos could also get to it. Additionally, a Frightfur engine could be added that made it even easier to access a Luber while further extending at the same time. That's a lot of cards though. The consistency made it the best deck in the room, but the low amount of non-engine and large amount of bricks meant it couldn't dominate as a tier 0 threat, settling instead for tier 1. Then, Power of the Elements hit. This set introduced Sprite, an incredibly svelte engine, and Tearlament, an incredibly powerful mill strategy. Sprite had a lot of early success as people tested to find the best build of Tearlament. Sprite's strength was its abundance of 1.5 card combos, and Sprite Starter, a 1 card combo that locked you into 2s. This allowed them to cut back on the main engine and add more engines or more non-engine space. Branded began to cut extraneous cards like the Frightfur engine for non-engine to compete. Then Tearlament was solved. Tearlament as a mill deck works on a slightly different axis. While it still runs non-engine, you need to make sure that when you mill, you hit. Casino Tier just didn't cut it for that, even though it was very powerful in its own right. The release of the Ishizu cards ensured that you would mill usually at least a fourth of your deck, hence why you could afford to run any non-engine at all. This environment meant that both players in the mirror would be running with almost their entire deck at the ready at any given time, and that any other deck wouldn't be able to keep up. And so many of those cards would be live too, as the deck contained hardly any bricks. With that much access and that many live cards enabling different avenues of play, luck was greatly de-emphasized and skill and creativity came to the forefront. Finding how best to use the resources was much more important than if you drew into them or managed to mill them, because you simply would find them. I personally find the Tearlament mirror really draining, just because of all the things you have to keep track of at the same time, but I understand the appeal of removing a lot of luck from the situation, and I actually think Konami does too. They just made one mistake, which we're building to. In the wake of Tearlament being hit on the list for dominating the format, Kashtira came forth with a 1-card combo and also a very small engine, as did Pearly and Super Heavy Samurai. In the post-Tearlament world, decks now had consistent access to 1-card combos and tiny engines to expand their non-engine slots. We started with anywhere from 4 to 9 slots, and now we've grown to 13 to 14 being standard across the board. And now we come to Snake Eyes and Tenpai, where the trend continues at an alarming rate. We now have engines that are so small and yet consistent that they can run half non-engine. Now, a large amount of games played consist of both players holding 4 pieces of non-engine and 1 starter that represents full combo. The 2 players sling their non-engine at each other until it's exhausted, and then the winner of that round of Go Fish does their combo and wins. It's not exactly enthralling gameplay to watch or to play. The problem to me is not the 1-card combos. After all, as I said, we've had 1-card combos for a long time. One could argue that they do a lot more than they used to, but that's relatively normal power creep for the game. Nor does it seem to be the non-engine, which has always been an integral part of Yu-Gi-Oh! As a game. The problem to me seems to be the space for non-engine. The 1-card combos and the power of our non-engine enables that kind of deck building, but what really causes it is how small the engines are. You can make a 1-card combo that requires a lot of deck space. Just look at Branded these days. A lot of them are playing 50-card decks, but they have trouble converting against decks that have 4 interruptions in hand and then full combo. Snake Eye and Tenpai just have too few cards that they have to play to make a very powerful end board. They hardly run any bricks, they don't have any flex cards, it's just their svelte little combo and then non-engine. This leads to a stagnation of gameplay both in the context of hand trap wars defining the format and in the extremely linear combos these small engines create. You can't have many variations in the combo if the deck only consists of 3 or 4 main deck engine monsters that all have similar effects. If their 1-card combos were less powerful like Alistair, it would be fine. Players would need to include more engines and less non-engine to compete. Every time I see a cool new side engine like Fiendsmith or Melodious, I wonder if that deck space wouldn't just be better served by a few more non-engine slots. I think that really sucks. There's so many cool little engines that we can't play any of them in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because you gotta run 3 more of the worst hand trap you've ever seen in your entire life. If the engine required more cards like Branded, that would be fine as well. I'm not exactly a fan of garnets, but there's a way to make larger engines without creating garnets, like what you see in Sword Soul or Sprite. But having both a small engine and a powerful end board has proved to be the breaking point for the game that turns matches into a game of Go Fish. The only way to stop this is for Konami to reverse course in the past half-a-year trend and make powerful decks with bigger engines and small engines with lesser payoffs again. Until then, we'll likely be stuck in formats like this one for the foreseeable future. Got any Ash Blossoms? Go Fish. Hey there, thanks for watching another video. Why don't you give it a like, share it around, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell for notifications. You know, the YouTube stuff. You can also follow me on Twitch and Twitter for more content. I got content plenty for ya. You can also support the channel by giving me money. You have a Patreon. If you join the Patreon, you can show up in the credits over here. I would really appreciate that. You can also use my TCG Player affiliate link to get any singles, sealed product, or accessories you want, all to start supporting the channel at the same time. That's all for this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and have a wonderful rest of whatever time it is for you. Bye now!